off the job at 3 plants on Friday is shaping up to be a test of the strength of union contracts. A contract with substantial wage increases and other concessions from 3 automakers could signal that organized labor is still an economic force to be reckoned with and accelerate a recent wave of organizing. However, there are pitfalls. A prolonged strike could undermine the 3 established U.S. automakers, General Motors, Ford, and Stellantis, which owns Chrysler, Jeep, and Ram. And a prolonged strike could send the politically crucial Midwest into recession. Ken Paxton, the embattled Attorney General of Texas, survived an impeachment vote in the state Senate over the weekend, but the case is far from over. The U.S. Justice Department still has an open investigation over many of the same allegations of corruption and abuse of office. And in October, Paxton's lawyers will be in court with state prosecutors to set a trial date for his pending indictment on 2 counts of securities fraud. Rudolph Giuliani, once America's mayor, and who is already under criminal indictment and at risk of losing his law license for his efforts to keep Donald Trump in office after the 2020 election, is now being sued by his own lawyer. The lawyer, Robert Costello, who had been leading Giuliani's defense against an onslaught of legal woes, signed onto the lawsuit brought by his firm to recover more than $1.3 million in unpaid legal fees. This development is a stunning blow to Giuliani as he nears a financial breaking point. Voting rights advocates said Texas law intended to curb fraud is impeding people with disabilities, older voters, and non-English speakers from voting. The new voting law became a priority for Governor Greg Abbott after Trump claimed he lost the 2020 election because of election fraud, a claim that has been debunked by judges across the country. Nevertheless, Abbott threatened to call a special session of the Texas legislature until Texas lawmakers send him the voting bill to sign. Well, the leaders of New York City and New York State, where officials say the arrival of migrants has set off a humanitarian crisis, seem to turn on each other this week after the state sent a scathing letter accusing the city of resisting its help and being slow to act. In the letter, a lawyer representing Governor Kathy Hochul faulted Mayor Eric Adams' management of New York's migrant crisis, and she also used very sharp language, which has punctured the appearance of a city-state harmony that the 2 leaders have spent much of their tenures cultivating. Far-right Republicans tried their hand at governing this week, cutting a government funding deal with center-right lawmakers in hopes of breaking a logjam of their own making as Congress lurches towards a potential shutdown on September 30th. But in a twist, several rank-and-file ultra-conservative lawmakers blasted the deal as too weak. Now it's at risk of falling apart. The deal would fund the government until October 31st to buy more time for a long-term measure while imposing an 8% cut to domestic programs, with the exception of the Pentagon and veterans. The deal also includes a swath of restrictive immigration policies that are popular on the right. The deal had no chance of surviving in the Senate. You are listening and watching Areva Martin in real time, and I'm your host, Areva Martin. This is your one-stop destination for today's trending news, expert analysis, and my unfiltered opinions. In this hour, we are talking about the New York immigration crisis. This is hour 2. This is hour where we go big. We dig behind the headlines. We go behind the story, and we bring you people who are impacting those stories. These are stories that have big headlines and big impact. The news of the New York mayor, Eric Adams, fighting with New York's governor, Kathy Hochul, those have been headlines for over a week, going into probably multiple weeks. And they include the mayor, Eric Adams, pointing the finger at Joe Biden. We now have seen some local Congress people in New York jumping into the fray, jumping into this fight. and in some instances, locking arms with Republicans to blame Democrats in Washington for not securing the border and not doing enough to help New York. Well, with all of this finger pointing, with the governor pointing the finger at the mayor and the mayor pointing the finger at the president and Congress people pointing the finger at the president, what impact is all of this going to have on the 2024 election? We know Republicans have been accusing Joe Biden of not securing the borders for years, for decades, and this year is no different. We know they want to make immigration the new abortion issue. They want to use it as a wedge issue and as an issue to motivate its base to come out. We've seen Abbott in Texas, Governor Abbott, take immigration issues into his own hands, quite frankly, illegally, by putting barriers in water that has, waterways that are used by migrants to come into Texas, waterways that he doesn't have control over, inserting himself in federal immigration policies. Abbott, along with Governor DeSantis of Florida, have also been sending buses of migrants to cities in the West and on the North, places like Massachusetts, California. I think we have received our 14th bus that has been sent to us from Ron DeSantis. And Massachusetts, Los Angeles, California, other states are looking at ways to sue these governors. So today we're asking, what is the real issue? What's happening in New York around immigration, and what is the solution? When we come forward, we talk to a New York State representative and an immigration lawyer. We get answers to these thorny questions and more. Stay with us, KBLA Talk 1580.
Is the pen mightier than the sword?
They say the pen is mightier than the sword. At KBLA Talk 1580, we not only have a lot to talk about, we have a lot to write about. Politics, relationships, business, empowerment, and culture. The all-star roster at KBLA Talk 1580 has you covered.
That's what it's all about.
Be sure to follow us on all our socials for our latest book releases, op-eds, essays, and commentaries from our hosts. And, of course, download the KBLA 1580 app as we strive to remain your most trusted, credible, and reliable source for the issues you care about. This is unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
What up, baby?
I'm young, gifted, and black. KBLA Talk 1580, we do more than just talk.
Hey there, I'm Jared Hill, president of the National Association of Black Journalists of Los Angeles, and I just want to say thank you for the benevolent $10,000 donation and scholarships for the next generation of black journalists.
And I'm Haywood Galbraith, photojournalist and founder of the Minority Photojournalism Institute. Thanks, KBLA, for your generous $10,000 scholarship gift to help us train the next generation of black photojournalists.
Congratulations to all the students who will benefit from the scholarship dollars raised at our Black History Month luncheon, honoring black legends in LA media. When we come forward at KBLA Talk 1580, we're bringing everybody with us. Everybody with us. Everybody with us. Everybody with us.
Access granted.
In a survey conducted by the public opinion research firm Eviderus, KBLA Talk 1580 consistently emerged as the station of choice for black audiences in the Los Angeles media market and beyond. The survey also revealed that the vast majority of black audiences are concerned about the lack of black-owned media and are more likely to listen to talk radio that focuses on issues that impact the black community. For some reason, the other talk stations haven't quite figured that out.
If you think about KFI, well, KFI only has like a 3% black listenership. 3%. So there's a good 97% out there to support a station like KBLA.
At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your black. Your black. Your black.
Follow the leader. KBLA Talk 1580. Follow the leader.
Be sure to follow us us on Instagram at KBLA 1580.
Follow the leader.
Are you ready?
The station leading the way with exclusive interviews,
Follow the leader.
stimulating conversation, and intellectual discourse that empowers, enlightens, and informs.
Follow the leader.
Follow the leader at KBLA 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
Keep following the leader.
Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader.
Gotta stay fresh, my house shot with a rest bar, shot with a rest bar, shot with a rest bar.
Have you visited us online for the grand opening of KBLA.store? For the best in new merch, gift ideas, books.
We are back. This is Areva Martin in real time. I'm your host, Areva Martin, and this is hour 2 of the show. And this is the hour where we talk about stories that have big headlines and big impact. And today, one of those stories is the immigration crisis in New York and how it is causing New York Democrats to turn on each other and to turn on the president. We're asking today what impact all of this may have on the 2024 election. We know the House is at issue, regaining control of the U.S. Congress and maintaining the White House. And with all of this fighting in New York, are both of those possibilities now in jeopardy? According to the mayor of New York, Eric Adams, the rapid arrival in New York of more than 100,000 asylum seekers is wreaking havoc on government budgets and testing the city's safety net because the city has a right to shelter law. Now, this crisis is causing Democratic allies to turn against each other, to be engaged in name calling and finger pointing, and otherwise vulnerable Republicans are watching closely what is happening in New York and starting to believe that perhaps there's an opportunity for them to survive in districts that otherwise might have seemed out of reach. Joining me in this hour to help us make sense of what's happening in New York is Assembly Member Rodneyse Bichotte Hermelyn. She is a member of the New York Assembly, District 42, and immigration attorney Mayra Joli. Thanks to both of you for joining. Welcome back, Assemblywoman. Ooh, a lot going on in New York. At first, it just seemed like it was Eric Adams using the bully pulpit to point the finger at Joe Biden and say he needed more resources. The White House kind of firing back, saying, no, it's not the resources. You need to manage the resources that you have. And now the governor is involved, and she and Eric Adams seem to be finger pointing. Republicans are locking arms with some congressional Dems in the state. It's a mess. Tell us what's happening on the grounds in New York around this immigration issue.
Well, thank you, Areva, for having me on the show tonight. I want to also welcome our guest speaker as well, Mayra Joli, on immigration. Let me tell you, the migrant crisis has been at the forefront of all topics in New York City and the state of New York. And first, let me just say that, you know what? It's not the mayor's fault. It's not even the governor's fault. This is an unprecedented issue where the city and the state just was not ready to embrace and have resources for this flux of migrants. So right now, people are complaining and, there's no one else to turn to but the government. As you know, there's pressure of population, poverty, civil wars, natural disaster that has pushed people from all over the world to the United States border. This is nothing new. There's about more than 2.1 million people who are still waiting to be granted asylum. Okay. And as you mentioned, New York City has an established landmark case, the right to shelter, which was a decision that was made in 1979, which pretty much says that the city needs to provide shelter to any homeless person with their families, women, men, so that they can get protection, the same protection as the residents here. And as a result of this right to shelter law, immigrants, or migrants, I should say, have felt that New York City is a place of sanctuary, welcoming anybody who can come in who may not have access to any resources, and that the city will find them resources. This is similar laws in other cities like Massachusetts. And as you know, Massachusetts is also overburdened with a shelter system where the governor has literally declared a state of emergency. Okay. There are a number of sanctuary cities, I think over 600 sanctuary cities in the United States. And I have to say, New York City has probably taken the biggest burden in terms of having to provide resources and welcome a lot of these migrants. In New York City, we have more than 113,000 migrants that have arrived in New York City since spring of 2022. No other city has met that threshold. We are also currently housing 59,000 asylum seekers. And just last week, we received nearly 3,000 through our city system. Okay.
Yeah, let me jump in here, because as I'm listening to this, you say it's not the mayor's fault. It's not the governor's fault. My understanding, I'm not an immigration attorney, I'm a civil rights attorney, is that immigration is a congressional issue. And I'm curious as to why the finger pointing at the Biden administration, particularly we saw in the court system recently, the DACA executive order signed by President Obama, and the way that DACA has been confined by the court system. So the president has very limited powers when it comes to immigration issues. And when the president, i.e. Obama or any other president, has used their executive powers to try to address some of the immigration issues, immediately the Republican attorney generals, the Republican nonprofit organizations, advocacy organizations run into court and makes it impossible for the president's executive order to be implemented or to have any impact. Mayra, you are an immigration lawyer. Did I get that right in terms of who has the power to do something about immigration in our system?
Yeah. Well, what happened is that the main problem is letting them in. Once our borders are in such a situation that allowed people to come in, then once they are in the United States, all the triggers of the laws have to apply because they are seeking asylum. But keep in mind that seeking asylum is not living all the way from Madagascar and coming all the way to the border of Mexico and claim asylum. That is not a legitimate asylum claim. A person who claims asylum has to knock on the door of the first territory they found outside the territory that they feel like they.
Hold on a second, though, but I just want to talk about our system of government and where the power to address immigration issues lie. Because the Assemblywoman said it's not the mayor's fault, it's not the governor's fault. Yes. So I'm trying to understand it's not the executive branch has limited powers also, like she's saying the governor and mayor has limited powers. So I'm trying to help people understand the role that Congress plays in our system as it relates to immigration laws.
Okay. We have a little power outage.
Okay, well,
are we here?
We're going to let you work that out. So, Assemblywoman, you don't think it's the mayor's problem, mayor's fault. You don't think it's the governor's fault. No, where do you say the fault lies?
I think the fault lies. First of all, it's our whole political system, right? You know, as you mentioned, it is Congress who actually enacts these immigration reform laws. The executive branch, the president, does have a level of executive order to do some things. Okay, I mean, Biden has had
but let me stop you there, because when you say that DACA was just a federal court in Texas just ruled that DACA, which was by executive order by President Obama, could not be implemented. It's not constitutional. So when you say executive orders of the president, what do you believe he has the power to do?
I mean, within the confines of the Constitution, he still has some wiggle room, as long as it's legitimate, as long as it's fair and equitable, to allow some level of immigration reform. And I can tell you, one of the programs was the reunification of families, where you see a number of the Haitians. I am a daughter of Haitian immigrants. We now are calling a lot of these Haitians who are coming to the United States the Biden Haitians, okay? Just as long as there are people who are here who can vouch for them, they pay $3,000 and Haitians can come. This is the first time ever in history that a president of the United States had allowed some type of program for Black immigrants, okay? That's another issue where we're talking about immigrants, but what happens to the Black immigrants, right? The Black immigrants are typically at the bottom of the barrel. And so, but that's under Biden's executive order. Biden also, again, as we're talking about Black immigrants and even like the Honduras and the El Salvadorians, you have the TPS that's typically renewed every year. That's under the executive order. Biden and his administration allows that to happen every year. So there is some.
But you also acknowledge that executive orders are not laws, and they are temporary. And the next president that comes in can completely, eliminate those orders, and they are frequently challenged in court. But let's talk about what does New York want the Biden administration to do?
New York wants the Biden administration to provide funding. We're asking, billions of dollars to provide food, resources, and shelters. And also the New York is also asking the Biden administration to issue these work permits. I mean, rather having a lot of these migrants sit around and do nothing, they can be part of the economic, economic atmosphere where they are paying into the tax system, and then eventually they will start leaving the social services resources that's being sucked out of the city, and they will start being independent. It's mandated that the kids have to go to school. And again, it's mandated that a lot of these asylum seekers, migrants, whichever categories there are, have to be sheltered.
Right. Let me say this to you, Assemblywoman. One of the regular contributors on my show is an immigration attorney. His name is Alan Orr. Alan, and I asked him this question, why doesn't the Biden administration do something about the work permit issue that you just described? And he says the reality is that the system is over-challenged, is overwhelmed, and that Congress will not give the money, will not vote to pass legislation that would give additional funding to allow for the backlog to be worked off. So he goes back to Congress and says it's not an executive order issue. I mean, an executive office issue. It is a congressional issue. Mayra, are you back? I think we have your sound.
Yes, I'm back. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
A little. Go ahead. We're going to see if we can work with your sound. I'm trying to understand what's happening with, again, congressional Republicans. Why, Assemblywoman, I think we've lost her again, why don't we see more attacks on them? More, calling out those Republican lawmakers that refuse to provide the kind of funding that would be needed to address the backlog for processing things like work permits.
Look, the mayor, the governor are the lowest hanging fruit. There's politics all over, all over the place. As you know, here in the state of New York, the courts have rejected the congressional lines, which now puts the Republicans at risk, because if the lines are redrawn, there's a potential of getting 9 more seats, and then we'll get the congressional. So right now, hold on,
stop right there. I'm so glad you said that. So given that we have an opportunity to take back the Congress as Democrats and perhaps enact common sense immigration reform. Is it political suicide to be pointing the finger at the White House when you just said there's a possibility that we could gain 9 Democratic seats?
Yeah, I agree. I think that there is an opportunity there's a lot of finger pointing. Currently, as mentioned, it's very difficult for the mayor and the governor to work under limited resources and in a condition where they have no control over. We all get that. Fingers are being pointed to Biden because, again, he has some executive control. We cannot necessarily point the fingers to Congress because we don't have control of Congress.
Well, that doesn't mean we can't hold them accountable. I disagree with that. Just because we don't have the numbers doesn't mean we can't hold our congressional leaders, even though they're Republicans. They are there to govern for the entire country.
But they don't want.
Hold that thought. When we come forward, more on this conversation about what's going on in New York around the immigration crisis and who is at fault. Now, you say that the mayor is not at fault. The governor of New York says the mayor is absolutely at fault. More when we come forward. KBLA Talk 1580.
If you're not listening to Tavis Smiley weekday mornings on KBLA Talk 1580, you're missing out. Everybody wants to talk to Tavis.
That's one reason, by the way, why I'm so thrilled to have this conversation with you today. The 3 people I always most hoped would interview me were Phil Donahue, Studs Terkel, and Tavis Smiley. Donahue's retired, Terkel's deceased, so this is a real thrill for me. And the reason why I have such respect for what you do is you have a historically informed conversation of depth and detail.
Be sure to tune in to Tavis Smiley weekday mornings, 9 a.m. to 12 noon on your unapologetically progressive radio station, KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA Talk 1580. Is the pen mightier than the sword?
They say the pen is mightier than the sword. At KBLA Talk 1580, we not only have a lot to talk about, we have a lot to write about. Politics, relationships, business, empowerment, and culture. The all-star roster at KBLA Talk 1580 has you covered.
That's what it's all about.
Be sure to follow us on all our socials for our latest book releases, op-eds, essays, and commentaries from our hosts. And, of course, download the KBLA 1580 app as we strive to remain your most trusted, credible, and reliable source for the issues you care about. This is unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
What up, baby?
I'm young, gifted, and black. At KBLA Talk 1580, we do more than just talk.
Hey there, I'm Jared Hill, president of the National Association of Black Journalists of Los Angeles, and I just want to say thank you for the benevolent $10,000 donation and scholarships for the next generation of black journalists.
And I'm Haywood Galbraith, photojournalist and founder of the Minority Photojournalism Institute. Thanks, KBLA, for your generous $10,000 scholarship gift to help us train the next generation of black photojournalists.
Congratulations to all the students who will benefit from the scholarship dollars raised at our Black History Month luncheon, honoring black legends in LA media. When we come forward at KBLA Talk 1580, we're bringing everybody with us. Everybody with us. Everybody with us. Everybody with us.
Access granted.
In a survey conducted by the public opinion research firm Eviderus, KBLA Talk 1580 consistently emerged as the station of choice for black audiences in the Los Angeles media market and beyond. The survey also revealed that the vast majority of black audiences are concerned about the lack of black-owned media and are more likely to listen to talk radio that focuses on issues that impact the black community. For some reason, the other talk stations haven't quite figured that out.
If you think about KFI, well, KFI only has like a 3% black listenership. 3%. So there's a good 97% out there to support a station like KBLA.
At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your black. Your black. Your black.
Follow the leader.
KBLA Talk 1580.
Follow the leader.
Be sure to follow us on on Instagram at KBLA 1580.
Follow the leader.
Are you ready?
The station leading the way with exclusive interviews,
Follow the leader.
stimulating conversation, and intellectual discourse that empowers, enlightens, and informs.
Follow the leader.
Follow the leader at KBLA 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
Keep following the leader.
Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader.
Gotta stay fresh, my house shot with a rest bar, shot with a rest bar, shot with a rest bar.
Have you visited us online for the grand opening of KBLA.store? For the best in new merch, gift ideas, books, media, and more, log on to KBLA.store. Be sure to check out our KBLA team favorites at KBLA.store today. That's KBLA.store for all the official merch on your favorite talk radio station, KBLA Talk 1580.
Bounce is back.
Here comes the brand new flavor in your head.
Race, social justice, sports, politics, art, music, culture. We do it all on the D.L. Hughley Afternoon Show. If you're not tuning in, then you are definitely missing out. It's the D.L. Hughley Afternoon Show, weekdays from 2 to 4 only on unapologetically progressive KBLA Talk 1580.
Like a brand new flavor in your head.
This is a rather bold pronouncement, but we think we can back it up. If you come across a radio frequency anywhere putting more variety and more diversity on the air than KBLA Talk 1580, we sure would like to hear about your discovery.
You got to have vision.
You can search, but we are confident that you won't find more shows covering more topics, hosted by a more diverse and inclusive lineup of talkers than the squad we have assembled here at KBLA Talk 1580.
This is the time, brothers. This is the time.
We've got something for everybody.
That's right.
Health and healing, history and humor, issues and events, empowerment and entertainment, all in one station.
What's really going on?
Free enterprise, you dig?
KBLA Talk 1580.
Yes.
Oh yeah. We got a lot to talk about.
King Kong ain't got on me.
If you're not listening to Tavis Smiley weekday mornings on KBLA Talk 1580, you're missing out. Everybody wants to talk to Tavis.
That's one reason, by the way, why I'm so thrilled to have this conversation with you today. The three people I always most hoped would interview me were Phil Donahue, Studs Terkel, and Tavis Smiley. Donahue's retired, Terkel's deceased, so this is a real thrill for me. And the reason why I have such respect for what you do is you have a historically informed conversation of depth and detail.
Be sure to tune in to Tavis Smiley weekday mornings, 9 a.m. to 12 noon on your unapologetically progressive radio station, KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA Talk 1580. Is the Ben Mighty?
This is hour 2 of Areva Martin in real time. And in this hour, we are talking about the big fight in New York about immigration and who is at fault. The governor's pointing the finger at the mayor is pointing the finger at the White House. And some congressional Democrats are joining with Republicans in criticizing both the mayor, the governor, and the president. Joining me in this hour is Assemblywoman Rodneyse Bichotte Hermelyn. She is a member of the New York State Assembly, District 42, and Mayra Joli. She's an immigration attorney in Florida. So, Mayra, there was an article out this morning in the Los Angeles Times that says Los Angeles is not having the same issue that New York is having, although busloads of migrants are being bussed into Los Angeles pretty much every week. I think there have been 14 plus buses sent to Los Angeles. And one of the reasons cited in this article is the infrastructure that has been built, the nonprofit organizations that are working hand in hand with the city of Los Angeles, that they've created a system that allows for the quick processing of individuals, getting them, many of them are coming here temporarily and are going to rural parts of the state where they're going to work as migrant farm workers. And others are, being taken in by family members and friends. So what do you see as the difference between what's happening in New York versus Los Angeles?
Well, what you see is that New York has been selling themselves more as a come over here. We take everybody. There are free stuff. We gonna house you. Your children are gonna go to school. You're gonna be taken care of. That's what New York has been selling. In selling themselves as being a sanctuary city. Plus, everybody wants to be in New York. Everybody wants the opportunity to be in Times Square. And that has been given. Right now, it's a circular firing squad. The mayor is blaming the governor. The government is blaming the mayor. Everybody's blaming Joe Biden. But Joe Biden is at fault. Because if the border had been secure, if the wall continued to be built, we can deal with the
no, Mayra. We're not going to sit here and suggest that a wall. Yes. You haven't been following the wall drama. That wall that Trump promised to build has caused major damage to indigenous communities and so many other communities. And it's not a wall that's going to end our immigration issues, because we know there are tunnels and there are all kinds of ways that people are able to get over a wall. So we're not going to sit here and suggest that that's the suggestion. That is a legitimate solution to any of our immigration problems.
Yes, but Areva, if you let me explain, because
you can't explain the wall to me. I just reject that categorically. There's no evidence to support that.
I cannot
we can't have a conversation. If you want to talk about something other than the wall, we can do so, but we can't talk about a wall as a way of addressing a very serious immigration issue. We can't. It's not a solution. So we have to talk about something else that's
all right.
legislative.
The solution is once they're here, then we're gonna try to find out what to do with them, because they come in, but we already have millions of immigrants that I've been working with that are here in the United States. Their situation has not been even close to being resolved. And we are putting more people into the system right now. Before this crisis that the Biden administration didn't call a crisis for the longest time. Before this, one of my clients only have to wait for 45 days for renewal of their work permit. Right now, it's 365 days.
Well, obviously, but Mayra, obviously, Joe Biden did not create the crisis at the border. He's been in office 2.5 years. Our immigration crisis predates Joe Biden, probably before Joe Biden was even born.
Let
me ask you this. Hold on a second. I want to ask the Assemblywoman this. So, there's a tendency, and your family are immigrants, right, Assemblywoman Hermelyn? And, there is a tendency in this country to malign immigrants. And I reject that. I live in California. This economy, and I'm sure it's true of New York. I visit New York frequently. Our economy of the United States could not operate without immigrants. There is a great article in Florida about a Florida businessman who owns a chain of restaurants. And he was a staunch supporter of Governor Ron DeSantis. And he was supporting Ron DeSantis when he was going through all of his anti-woke laws, including one that made it very difficult for immigrants in Florida to work, to get driver's license, etc. This business owner has his restaurants raided. He's forced to fire 19 workers. He's fined $500,000. He has a come to Jesus moment and realizes he can't operate a chain of restaurants in the state of Florida without an immigrant population. So we're not going to malign immigrants in this conversation, because this economy, our U.S. economy, Assemblywoman, thrives on the work, the labor, the contributions of immigrants. And we are all immigrants, not the descendants of slaves. No, they're not the descendants of slaves, because we didn't.
We have plenty of legal immigrants who have work permit. We have plenty of Venezuelans with TPS, Salvadorian, Guatemala. We have plenty of people who are legally in this country that can work those jobs. So we cannot start.
Mayra, you are categorically.
May I say something? May I say something?
You can say something after I say this. Let me correct it. I got to do a fact check here. You're categorically wrong about that. Right now in the state of California and across this country, there are not enough workers to fill jobs that are empty. You ask any employer.
Because the government is giving handouts.
No, you just said that we have. No, Mayra, I'm going to have to cut your mic off. You just said there were plenty of legal migrants in this country to fill all the jobs. That's categorically false. We do not spread fake news on this show. Go ahead, Assemblywoman.
I was going to say, look, we know what's going on, okay? The vast majority of these immigrants that are coming in are people of color, okay?
Yes.
And as you know, this country has allowed millions of immigrants from the European countries through Ellis Island openly, and data have shown that people coming from all over has contributed to building this country, okay? Lots of these immigrants, they don't come just to sit around. They come to work. They come to have a better quality of life of their families.
But if that's the case, if they come to work,
Mayra, you have to let her finish her statement.
Right, and we should find a way to spread the wealth across the United States and embracing the immigrants. Now, and I'm gonna go back to New York City. Mayor Adams, and a lot of pointing fingers, he is not anti-immigrant, okay? He is probably one of the biggest supporter of the immigrant community. It's just that New York City has taken an overwhelmingly majority of immigrants coming in.
Hold that thought, Assemblywoman, because when we come forward, I want to ask you, and I'm glad you clarified for the record that Mayor Adams is not anti-immigrants, but I do want to ask you why the governor of the state of New York then has said that he is at fault in some ways for this crisis. When we come forward, KBLA Talk 1580.
Follow the leader.
KBLA Talk 1580.
Follow the leader.
Be sure to follow us on Instagram at KBLA 1580.
Follow the leader.
Are you ready?
The station leading the way with exclusive interviews,
Follow the leader.
stimulating conversation, and intellectual discourse that empowers, enlightens, and informs.
Follow the leader.
Follow the leader at KBLA 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Keep following the leader.
Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader.
Gotta stay fresh, my house shot with a rest bar, shot with a rest bar, shot with a rest bar.
Have you visited us online for the grand opening of KBLA.store? For the best in new merch, gift ideas, books, media, and more, log on to KBLA.store. Be sure to check out our KBLA team favorites at KBLA.store today. That's KBLA.store for all the official merch on your favorite talk radio station, KBLA Talk 1580.
Bounce is back.
Pick up the brand new flavor in your head.
Race, social justice, sports, politics, art, music, culture. We do it all on the D.L. Hughley Afternoon Show. If you're not tuning in, then you are definitely missing out. It's the D.L. Hughley Afternoon Show, weekdays from 2 to 4 only on unapologetically progressive KBLA Talk 1580.
Like a brand new flavor in your head.
This is a rather bold pronouncement, but we think we can back it up. If you come across a radio frequency anywhere putting more variety and more diversity on the air than KBLA Talk 1580, we sure would like to hear about your discovery.
You got to have vision.
You can search, but we are confident that you won't find more shows covering more topics, hosted by a more diverse and inclusive lineup of talkers than the squad we have assembled here at KBLA Talk 1580.
This is the time, brothers. This is the time.
We've got something for everybody.
That's right.
Health and healing, history and humor, issues and events, empowerment and entertainment, all in one station.
What's really going on?
Free enterprise, you dig?
KBLA Talk 1580.
Yes.
Oh yeah. We got a lot to talk about.
King Kong ain't got on me.
If you're not listening to Tavis Smiley weekday mornings on KBLA Talk 1580, you're missing out. Everybody wants to talk to Tavis.
That's one reason, by the way, why I'm so thrilled to have this conversation with you today. The three people I always most hoped would interview me were Phil Donahue, Studs Terkel, and Tavis Smiley. Donahue's retired, Terkel's deceased, so this is a real thrill for me. And the reason why I have such respect for what you do is you have a historically informed conversation of depth and detail.
Be sure to tune in to Tavis Smiley weekday mornings, 9 a.m. to 12 noon on your unapologetically progressive radio station, KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA Talk 1580. Is the pen mightier than the sword?
They say the pen is mightier than the sword. At KBLA Talk 1580, we not only have a lot to talk about, we have a lot to write about. Politics, relationships, business, empowerment, and culture. The all-star roster at KBLA Talk 1580 has you covered.
That's what it's all about.
I'm back, and in this hour, we are talking about the immigration issues that are in the news pretty much every day involving New York City, the infighting between the New York City mayor and the governor of New York that has spilled over to finger pointing at the president of the United States. We're asking how this big fight between these top Democrats could impact the 2024 election. And one thing I want to make very clear, I am pro-immigration. I am pro-immigrants. Immigrants are the backbone of this country. They are often maligned. There's this baffling paradox and denial of reality surrounding the issue of immigration that we see played out in this country pretty much every day. And I'd say it involves a gap in critical thinking on the part of those who often decry the influx of immigrants to this country. We see that done regularly on Fox News and other conservative outlets, this vilifying of immigrants. And the same people who are often vilifying immigrants, like the story I just told you about the restaurant owner in Florida, are those that employ immigrant workers in their businesses, depend on immigrant workers for them to make money, to have thriving businesses, to make profit. So this notion that somehow immigrants, even those that don't have documentation, that somehow they are a drain on this society or a threat, is just categorically false. Immigrants are not the problem. They are a part of the solution. And as I said earlier, there is a huge crisis in employment in this country, and particularly in California. You ask any employer, they cannot find enough workers for the jobs that are available. The infrastructure bill that was passed that's putting billions of dollars into cities and states for roads and other infrastructure improvements, a lot of that money is unspent because there are not workers available to take the jobs. So I just want it to be very clear about that. So I want to ask you, Assemblywoman, about your governor, because Governor Hochul says that Eric Adams is the problem. What is she getting wrong?
Well, I think, again, Eric Adams, our mayor of New York City, is the lowest hanging fruit. And if you read the statistics in the projected budget, New York City will be spending $12 billion on emergency shelter over the next 3 years. So the governor currently is also getting pressure. Why? Because we are asking to house a lot of these immigrants in other counties outside of New York, because New York really has been bearing the brunt of a national crisis. That's the bottom line. But the governor doesn't necessarily have the wherewithal to do that, because these municipalities across the state of New York do not have those same laws, the shelter-in-place laws. And so you're dealing with potentially a constitutional issue with how we're going to house or spread the wealth across the state of New York. So, I think the governor and the mayor are under a lot of pressure. We're dealing, as you said, with both Republicans and Democrats who are feeling burdened. You have a number of people who feels that, immigrants should not be in their backyards. There's the whole not in my backyard approach. But at the end of the day, they are here, and we need to find solutions of how we can embrace them in our economic system, which is why we are looking at ways potentially of getting some type of New York State, potentially we're advocating for work permits so that these migrants can be part of the tax system and start being independently making some type of a living for their families. But again, it's just a situation that's been unprecedented. I think, again, the blame should be probably on the federal level. Immigration is a federal issue. When people come to my office as a state assembly, I cannot necessarily address these issues. I have to always refer them to our congressional representatives.
Yeah.
So it's really difficult. But I do want to address the immigration lawyer who's here, Mayra Joli. And I want to say that I think her frustration, and the reason why I know a little bit is because I'm currently in law school and I'm currently interning at an immigration law firm. And what's going on is that you have these cases, these lawyers who've been working with a lot of the immigrant clients for whether it's asylum, visas, whatever, or work status permits, whatever. We're dealing with Catholic Charities. And as a result of the influx of the migrants who are coming in, and also at the aftermath of COVID, there's been like a large backlog, right? And so any immigration attorney may feel frustrated because they're dealing with a group of clients that they've been fighting for a very long time. And now they have to wait even longer.
And I'm glad you mentioned that. You're right. There's no doubt that the southern border has been chaotic and even overwhelming at times. But this is not a Biden-Harris phenomenon. This just didn't happen when Joe Biden and Kamala Harris were elected into office. And just I'm talking. It's my show. I'm talking. And just like you said, the immigration attorneys may be frustrated because they've been dealing with this for a while, and a while is pre-2020. And we got to stay focused on the facts. Last year, Border Patrol officers made nearly 2.4 million arrests. Now, a lot of the people, almost half of the people are expelled. The majority of them are expelled. So there's, again, this myth, it's a myth that somehow the borders are wide open and everybody is coming into this country. And in fact, the numbers show that in recent years, the net immigration in the United States, which means, as you all know, the number of all arrivals, including what we call as illegal, a word I'm not too keen on, minus the number of departures, actually there's been a downward slope in the numbers. So we got to stick to the facts, and we can't place blame of immigration.
I deal with ICE on a daily basis.
Myra, you have to.
You cannot tell me.
Myra,
the
facts are the facts.
You call me as an expert, Areva. You want me to tell you my expertise?
No, I want you to answer the questions that I ask you. That's how it goes on a talk show. You get asked questions. You can't talk over the host because I will cut your mic off. I don't
like the answer. You can't say
it's not about liking the answer. It's my show. And if you want to be on my show, you have to answer my questions. That's the rules. I'm sorry. The facts are immigration is a big issue in this
something
country.
Clear, Areva. It's not that
we're going to get clear. You know what? We're going to wrap up this conversation.
To your show.
Rashad,
I give my point of view.
Rashad, let's close Myra's mic. She and I will talk after the show. The reality is immigration is an issue in this country, and it's everybody's responsibility. It's not an issue that just started with the Biden-Harris administration. It's an issue that predates them. And what's happening in New York is unfortunate because at a time when we should all be working together, the mayor, the governor, and the White House, we have this finger pointing that's happening. And I don't think it's positive for anyone. If we have an opportunity to win those 9 congressional seats in New York, I would hope, Assemblywoman, that the Democrats in New York would come together and figure out how to make that happen. Because if we're going to have real immigration reform in this country, we're going to need to be in control of the House, the Senate, and the White House. So at the end of the day, that's all that's going to make a difference.
Right. And again, all of this is politics. The Republicans are certainly using this opportunity to divide the Democrats, making it a crisis, as they would say. But Democrats need to understand that we need to kind of stand strong, be vigilant, and be focused. We can win back the congressional seats. We can then put in immigration reform laws that can help the crisis, that can find ways to incorporate the immigrants. And most of these immigrants are immigrants of color. Okay, people don't talk about that. We had no issues when the Italians, when the Serbs, when the Turks, many
the Ukrainians who we opened our arms to, So let's be clear about that. Hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians were welcomed into this country. So yeah, now is not the time for us to have a position anti-immigration, because we're talking about people of color. We need serious immigration reform, and it can only happen at the congressional level. And to get that kind of reform, we need to control the House. It's that simple. And if Democrats,
in order for us to control the House, we need to vote. We need to go.
And that's why we got to make it clear to people that the solution to this problem, and there is a solution, is the numbers in the House to be able to pass real immigration reform and to get it passed. And any notion that somehow a wall is going to address this problem, it's not. That's a fantasy. That's just a complete and unadulterated lie. That's not the solution to this problem. And we got to work together as Democrats to try to solve it. Thank you so much, Assemblywoman. And Mayra, you and I can have an off-the-camera conversation about immigration. I'd love to have you on with Alan Orr, an immigration attorney who is a contributor on this show. We talk a lot about immigration policy. We are out of time. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for your contributions. The next voice that you hear will be Robin Ayers and the Raw Report right here on KBLA Talk 1580. Don't touch your dial, and make sure you continue to follow this conversation. You can follow me on all social media platforms at Areva Martin. Be well.
Follow the leader.
KBLA Talk 1580.
Follow the leader.
Be sure to follow us on Instagram at KBLA 1580.
Follow the leader.
Are you ready?
The station leading the way with exclusive interviews,
Follow the leader.
stimulating conversation, and intellectual discourse that empowers, enlightens, and informs.
Follow the leader.
Follow the leader at KBLA 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Keep following the leader.
Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader.
Gotta stay fresh, my house shot with a rest spot.